Hello and happy, what is it, Memorial Day?
Memorial
What are we
Day.
on?
Yep. Shout
Some
out to all those
holiday.
that serve the country.
Yep. And when you work for yourself, sometimes you don't even recognize holidays. You just keep doing things on the day that they're scheduled. So we're here today with you guys. Maybe some of you can see us today on the live because you are off from your regular everyday activities. And maybe somebody is watching this on the replay later because they couldn't join us, but we're excited to have the people here that are here. So if you've got questions, by all means, whatever social media you're watching us on, feel free to throw it into the post or the chat function that's in there. We get a lot of the chat questions that come through here, so feel free to ask us these questions. But Anthony and I are this last couple of weeks, we've been on this topic of resilience, which is, the ability to bounce back after a challenge, an injury, an issue. And what we're finding more and more and more is that people's ability to be more resilient is actually getting lower and lower and lower. And, there's so many factors involved with resilience, but they're not able to tap into their inherent resilience because they're dealing with too many things coming at them at once. So between what's been happening just in the last 4 or 5 years, the fact that we're in the middle of an election again, the fact that, people are still kind of learning how to step back out of their homes and get back into socializing again. I mean, even after years, after COVID, we're still finding that resilience is a lot lower than it was in years past. So we really thought resilience, which is the most important part of the healing process, being resilient, being able to come back from issues that have gone on in the past, would be a really good topic area. So we've been spending time talking about resilience as a whole. Today, we're going to be talking about how it really is impacted, or how resilience really is influenced by cognitive health and cognitive abilities. So the part of Nourish and the part of the company that I spend most of my time in is really that cognitive rewiring, and really finding the underlying root emotional reasons people are struggling to be resilient, struggling to bounce back, and to find the health journey or the health experience that they want. So, Anthony, you spend more time with more of the science, the physiology, the working out, the nutrition components, and we've spent the last couple of weeks talking about those things. So,
Yep.
What I'd like to do today is talk about what we see typically as part of kind of underlying emotional challenges as a whole. Most of our clients are women. Most of them are high performing women that are used to, really achieving things at a higher level. And they seem to be the group that's struggling the most, especially high performing women who are ages 35 to 60. Now, there's many reasons for this. One of them is that this is the time period that most women are actually stepping into perimenopause and menopause, which a lot of women in their 30s never think, oh, menopause is having an impact on me now. But women are in a flux with their hormones all the time. And you may not realize, but menopausal symptoms, perimenopausal symptoms, can be impacting you up to 25 years. 25 years. It's not just one day your period stops and you shift over and it's all good. And so I know, Anthony, you see a lot of that with our clients when you do lab interpretation. You're starting to see hormone swings at an earlier age too, but a lot of us aren't told that. And I think you were telling me specifically, or I mean, I know this as well, but that you don't even diagnose, or you don't diagnose anything, but menopause and perimenopause aren't even diagnosed until you're actually past the point of where you would have seen it coming.
Yeah.
So we don't even get a heads up.
Yeah. I mean, technically, you know more than me because you're a woman. But
I'm in the middle of it.
With a diagnosis that we can't give, you wouldn't be diagnosed until you don't have a menstrual cycle for a year.
Yeah.
So and we hear it 8 months, 9 months, no cycle, 10 months, boom. That starts the clock over again for as far as the diagnosis goes.
Right. And the thing is, it's better when you know it's coming and you can be better prepared so that you can manage your way through this shift in life. But the shift is hitting us more than just physically, it's hitting us emotionally. Right. And what happens for a lot of us is our resilience starts to wean and go down as our body is trying to manage this new phase as it's going through this transformational time period. And again, this transformational time period could be a year. But for many women, it's 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, sometimes up to 20, 25 years. So we're making these shifts over time, and it's just getting blamed on our hormones. But there are so many things that impact that. One of them is our ability to be resilient in our emotional cognitive health. So a lot of what we'll see is women really struggling with foggy brain and the loss of words and the inability to kind of govern their emotions. And we don't want you to control your emotions. That's not what it is. It's the understanding of how do you receive them, how do you feel them, how do you witness them and actually experience them without having this over abundant response to them. So what happens is a lot of, especially women that are higher performers, women that are go-getters, women that are go, a lot of times we learned early on how to kind of squash the emotional response and kind of shove it to the side. But over time, that kind of creates a powder keg. So what happens is a bigger life moment happens, and then all of that explodes at once. So the understanding of how do you govern, how do you experience emotion without having this explosion of emotion because you've dampened them or tamped them down so much because of wiring that happened to you early on that you couldn't have this emotional response, or that you had to be so in tune with everyone else's emotional response that you couldn't have your own. And so many women will tell you that they identify as more of an empath. They're more empathic. And sometimes that's actually just kind of a blanketed term to use for people who feel that they experience or sense the emotions of others. But what's happening is they don't know the difference between the emotions of others and their own. So what happens is they become hyper responsive to the needs of others, to the emotion of others, but they don't know how to experience their own emotions because they don't understand the difference. So those of you especially who chose careers that are caregiving related, so you're nurses, teachers, moms, you got into healing, you got into healthcare, you got into areas where you were helping others. What happens is a lot of times those of us who choose those come at it because we feel that that's who we have to be in order to be seen, heard, or acknowledged. We grew up in households where we had unstable environments, where we didn't know what to expect from day to day. Some of us grew up with unstable support systems where we had alcoholics in the mix or narcissists in the mix. We had drug abusers or people who were very addicted to chaos. So we didn't have a stable environment, we didn't have good patterns, and we didn't know what to expect day to day. And what happened is we became hyper-focused on the needs of those unstable people in our lives, thinking that's how we had to stay safe. But now that doesn't serve us where we are. So we're in this fight or flight mode all the time, thinking that we have to be hyper-focused on everyone else before ourselves. And then our bodies will react in kind by giving us symptoms to get us to come back into self and acknowledge what's going on internally for ourselves. So not only do we see this on labs where we can see the hormones are out of balance, but we can also start to see this in the emotional response, the cognitive response. The central nervous system is wired in a way that it's just ready all the time. And this starts to deplete our body's ability to manage what's going on a regular basis. And then a bigger life experiences occur. And then we have these crazy emotional responses. And I don't want to say crazy because we are absolutely not crazy for having these responses. We have these overabundant responses. And then we don't know what to do about that. And then that depletes our ability to be resilient. So I know, Anthony, there are some supplements that we can also work with clients to help them, manage this a little bit better. But the central nervous system, when it doesn't feel safe, when the central nervous system isn't balanced, what the body is saying is that it thinks there's a danger that it has to be hyperwired to watch for. So a lot of the work that we do with clients is to help them, especially women who are in this 35 to 60-year-old range, who are also dealing with this shift that's occurring in just our life phase at that point. How do you move through perimenopause? How do you move into menopause much more gracefully? I'm not saying there's not going to be moments of challenge because I'm right in the middle of it myself. So I feel it. I understand it emotionally, mentally, and physically and personally. And Anthony gets to witness it alongside of me as my partner going through it next to me. But you can go through it much more gracefully when you start to understand what has an impact on it. And the biggest impact that we see is your ability to manage your body's response to stress. Now, stress could be physical, stress could be emotional, stress could be mental, spiritual,
chemical,
and what financial? Did you say?
Yeah, definitely financial, but chemical stress. I mean, even we talk about supplements, even many supplements, over supplementation, it's stress on the body. The body has to do something with these nutrients, and has to break them down and detoxify them. And if these pathways are, let me just say, jacked up, because that's scientific term that we use, jacked up and not functioning optimally, the body tries to circumvent that, and that's essentially what symptoms, not really symptoms, that's essentially what side effects are. Like with a drug, the side effects are drugs typically block or circumvent pathways, and the body has to figure out a different way to do it, and boom, that's a side effect or direct effect.
And then cognitively, what we start to see is that there are parts of the brain when you have trauma as a child. And trauma, again, is your body's ability to believe that you're safe. When it doesn't believe that it's safe, it starts to experience whatever your sensory experience is as traumatic. So then you have that sensory experience later in life, and then your body says, oh, we must be in a trauma state, when you're not actually in a trauma state at that point. But the trauma that you experience early on, especially before the age of 7 as a child, what that starts to do is hardwire the body. But it also does damage, actual physical damage to different parts of the brain, the parts of the brain that make decisions, the parts of the body that are able to know the emotions and physical feeling, the part of the brain that actually connects the body and the thoughts and the minds and the emotions as one can get separated and damaged. So what we do is we work with clients who are obviously older, typically than 7 years old, is we start to help them rewire the cognitive response, the emotional response, the physical response they have to different things that are happening in their lives, because their perception as an adult is that they are in danger again underneath the thought process that you have that's conscious. So when you're in the subconscious belief system, you're underneath, you're in that hardwired safety part of the brain. You don't realize some of those messages are going on. So if you've ever walked into a room and suddenly felt you were in danger, or suddenly felt like everything was wrong, that's typically a response that's happening at a subconscious level to some past trauma that occurred, or perception of trauma that occurred, that your body is reacting to 20, 30, 40 years later. And a lot of times you don't know directly why that's happening, but then you have this response. The body goes into fight or flight. It has all of these physical responses. You start to shut down. It puts more pressure on your system. It makes your hormones go out of balance. It gives you other symptoms because your body's on overload. Some of the ways to work around that is to have to get into that subconscious level. You cannot will your way out of a cognitive response like that. You cannot force your way to just feel safe. That's not how it works. So Anthony and I and the team here, not only do we work with you on what's going to work for you best nutritionally, what's going to work best for you, if there's supplemental support that you may need, what's going to work best for you physically, but also what's going to work best for you emotionally to help you rewire that emotional response that you're having to something that is potentially hidden that you don't even know is there. Some of you do know it's there and don't know what to do about it. So we work with somatic healing techniques. We work with things that help you physically move that response out of the body, rewire that response, believing that you're not safe. Finding what those things are through different techniques that help you get underneath the conscious brain. Those of you who pride yourself on being hyper logical, that you're super smart, that you get things done. I mean, I fit this category. That was an identity for a long time for me. And I rejected the idea that I couldn't control the emotions so that I could have the response that I wanted. I rejected the idea that emotions had anything to do with it. As far as I was concerned, they got to be cut out of the process and shoved into a box and moved on. And I leaned hard into the logic and the intelligence of something, the process. And what happens when we do that is a lot of times we can become very successful in many areas of our lives, but over time that starts to work against us. And then we start to have these responses that we can't explain. We gain weight that we can't explain because it doesn't make sense to how we're eating. Or we start to have these sleepless nights where we can't explain because we're doing all the right things. And then we start trying to take melatonin or sleep aids or things like that to help. But they actually over time will actually put more pressure on the body and cause more of an imbalance and dysregulation in the system, which then causes the body to go to a further panic stage of I'm not safe, which then keeps you on this spiral of hell, which then puts more pressure on the body and makes perimenopause, menopausal symptoms even worse. So for those of you with thyroid issues, those of you with adrenal dysfunction, those of you who are losing hair and can't figure out why, those of you with migraines, headaches, sleeplessness, those of you who feel anxious and just there's no reason for it, those of you with digestive issues, they all come back to the body feeling not safe, not balanced, and dysregulated. So if you don't have a cognitive rewiring, balancing process that you're working through, along with supporting the body physically, supporting the body nutritionally, then you're going to feel out of sync. Your body's going to lean too heavy onto one side, and then you're going to get super frustrated when the perfect diet they're eating, it isn't working. Or all the supplements that you're taking. I mean, Anthony, you see it all the time. What's pretty much the average of what you see, the amount of supplements you see people taking when they first come to us? Because most of the clients that we work with, they've been there, done that. They've done other processes. They've been through other programs. They paid thousands and thousands of dollars out of pocket to do other things before they get to us, still not finding the answers they're looking for. So when you see clients, I know they're taking tons of stuff most of the time.
Yeah, the clients will come into the program taking 0 supplements, which is very rare. And I've seen it as much as 50, but I would probably say, which is just, I can't even wrap my head around that. Then I would say the average is probably 15 to 20. And if they're good quality supplements, you're talking several $100s a month on supplements. And I mean, I get the purpose. You know, you run a vitamin D test, the results come back low. The results for that test are indicating how much vitamin D is in the blood, not indicating how much vitamin D is actually intracellular where we want it, right? Because that's where it does the business. And they're taking all this, spending all this money on good quality supplements. And most times, if it even helps, it's temporary.
Right.
And then, you know, they're on Facebook and they're scrolling through and, you know, because Facebook knows our buying patterns. Oh, turmeric, it reduces inflammation. It's good for the liver. Let me try that too. And then their supplement list just grows and grows. So I'll ask when we meet and we go over the supplements, because I look at the ingredients to make sure they're clean, make sure nothing's working against them. And I'll ask, you know, what are you taking this for? Sometimes they don't even know. Or do you feel this is helping? And sometimes they don't even know. It's hard to say if you're taking 15 supplements, 20 supplements, what is actually helping and not helping. And sometimes we just do a reset, you know, and start from 0. But yeah, it's a lot. It really is a lot of supplements.
And you can't supplement your way out of a trauma. right? And a lot of people look at trauma, they look at cognitive dysfunction, they look at it as that some big event had to have happened, right? They were attacked, they were kidnapped, their mom was murdered in front of them. And yes, they are absolutely traumatic events. But what most people, I don't think, fully appreciate, it's not the big T traumas that really cause us to have these long-term responses a lot of times. It's the little T traumas. It's the thing that we didn't recognize that were patterned over time. And I talk about, Anthony and I talk about the boiling frog syndrome, right? The idea that if you take a pot of boiling water and you put a frog in there, the frog's going to jump right out. But if you take a pot of room temperature water, you put the frog in there and then you raise the temperature of the water a degree every few minutes or so, eventually the frog will actually boil to death because he didn't realize that the boiling was happening because it happened so gradually. And so many of you out there are the boiling frog right now, but you don't realize, you're just like, it's hot. I don't know why. It's because it happened so gradually that you took on one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. And then the body got to a point where it said, I can't take on one more thing. So now I'm going to start showing up with these symptom responses. And when you're used to something, when it's so normalized that you don't even know it's a problem, that in and of itself is an issue. So the body has to communicate with you and it comes at you in a different way because you weren't paying attention the way it was trying to get a handle on it before. So I've been trained in a whole lot of different variety of different healing techniques, cognitive rewiring, healing. I'm right now just finishing a psychosomatic class where you rewire certain parts of the brain in very specific ways. But what I've gone through personally, as well as with our clients, is when you take a combination of all of these things and really help the client understand that they can become more resilient by understanding how to move these things up to the surface and dissolve them. You don't have to be in this boiling water all the time. You start to understand, one, that you're the frog, two, that you actually can get out, and three, how not to get back into another pot of boiling water because you're so used to it, you gravitate towards it. It's amazing how much more quickly the body can become resilient and actually heal from what's going on. A friend of ours approached us a couple of weeks ago, and she's been there, done that with a lot of things, and she wasn't finding any solutions on getting better. And I recommended one of the techniques that I do through this very specific active breathing technique to take her through this process to help her get to what was underneath and surfacing. And what's interesting about this is she hasn't even been able to get through the entire program yet because for whatever reason, her computer keeps shutting down in the middle of going through this process. It's about an hour and 15 minutes. And she said to me, I can't even get through the whole thing, but I've slept better than I have in decades after just doing pieces of this. And she was kind of resistant to it in the beginning because she said, look, I've done this. You know, I've done the yoga, I've done the therapy, I've done the somatic healing, I've done all the things. I've been there. I could practically teach it all myself. I said, look, just humor me and try this. Just getting through pieces of it, she says, I've slept better than I have in years, which means that there was a piece that got supported in a way that surfaced and dissolved so that at least her body could start getting into a sleeping pattern. And if you're not sleeping, your body cannot get into resilience. It is in panic mode all the time. There is no repair that can occur when your body isn't getting the rest that it needs. So if you aren't absorbing the nutrients, if you aren't getting the rest, if you aren't able to stabilize during the day, if you feel like your life is happening to you, that rewiring, that resilience can't come into play because you're just in survival mode all the time. And that's no good. Our brains actually go into a whole different thought pattern when we're in survival mode. It goes into hyperfocus. It goes into panic. It actually shuts down certain parts of the brain that make decisions and can see big picture. So if your brain is shutting down, you're not going to be able to find the words. You're not going to be able to find the solutions. You're not going to be able to push your way through this. So if any of this is resonating with you, if things are starting to make sense, if you're starting to look at the processes that you've used to this point and you're starting to understand more why, just white knuckling it through the perfect diet or shoveling in the supplements every day is not necessarily working for you, or going to the gym and spending more and more time there and not understanding why you still have this just tire across the middle of your stomach. If all of that is happening and you're white knuckling through it and doing more of what got you here, right? Doing more of what got you here isn't going to get you where you want to go. It's going to keep you here. So if this is resonating with you and you're starting to understand where the holes have been in the processes that you've used to this point, and know that the cognitive rewiring piece is the piece that you need to start looking at as part of your big picture solution, and that's resonating with you, then pop yourself onto our calendars. You can go to nourish123.com/heal and talk to one of our health coaches about what's going on for you right now. If this resonates with you, it's worth having a conversation. And it's not a sales process. It's not a sales conversation. It's really just to see, is this a process that we think would be a good fit? And then if it is, then we can have that conversation in the future. But really, it's to look at a plan of what really you would need in order to find the resilience, find the healing that it is that you're looking for, right? Or you can also just pop onto Amazon, or you can go onto our website and you can grab our book, because we talk a lot about a lot of this in our book. The whole process is there. The book Anthony's got in front of him, I've got it behind me. You can go to nourish123.com/th for transformational healing. We take our entire process apart and we show you step by step what it is that we're doing with our clients. There's downloads and other resources that you'll get access to when you get that book too. But here's what I need you to understand, and hopefully you're getting from this, is that at this point, if you are still struggling, especially if you are a woman between 35 and 60, and you are being told this is normal. Yes, it is common for other women to feel this way, but it is not normal for you to be suffering with symptoms like this. It is not. I don't care what your OBGYN is saying. I don't care what the other women in your life are saying. I'm telling you right now, it is not okay to suffer. And it's not okay just to go, well, perimenopause and I'm going to suffer. That's not okay. But if you'd like to live not suffering anymore, and you want to feel more balanced, and you want to feel more at peace, and you want to have more resilience, then pop onto our calendar at nourish123.com/heal. We'll have that conversation about what a plan could look like for you to find that resilience that you're looking for. And then again, if it looks like a good fit for us to work together, then we can have a conversation about that later. All right. Well, Anthony, anything else that we needed to hit today with this cognitive health and resilience?
That was good.
All right, great. All right, well, you guys, go ahead.
We do more resilience next week too?
I think we are, but I don't remember how many weeks we are in, so I will have to look back. But potentially there is one more left, but we will find out next week. I guess all of us will find that out next week too. So you guys have a good rest of your Memorial Day. Have a good rest of your time with family and friends if you're out with them, and we will see you next week.